My wife cheated on me with her boss, stole half of our $200, $0 savings in my family's estate, and now she's suing me for custody. And I just found out she bought a $150, $0 property with the money she took behind my back. I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. The craziest part. It all started with a gut feeling that I ignored for way too long. One day, I was sitting at my desk, going through some financial papers when I noticed a strange transfer on our bank statement. It was a sizable amount 75-0 that I didn't recognize. At first, I thought maybe it was an investment or some kind of joint expense I'd forgotten about, but then I looked closer. The transfer was made to an account with a name I'd never seen before, and it was under my wife's name. That's when the alarm bells started ringing. Had always been a bit bitchy, but she was also charming when she wanted to be, so I never suspected anything. She'd brush off my questions, give me some excuse about business expenses or a side project, but I knew she was lying. She'd been acting strange lately, more distant, secretive even. She'd stay late at work, claim she was working on a new project, but I'd catch her sneaking her phone a lot more often, hiding her messages behind her back. She'd get defensive if I asked about her phone or her whereabouts, which was unlike her. Usually she was pretty open, but now she was closing herself off. Then came the little things. Missing jewelry, expensive clothes she suddenly refused to explain, and that strange bank transfer. I was trying to piece it all together when I caught her in a lie about where she was last Thursday. She said she was at a client's dinner, but her phone location showed she was at some hotel downtown. I decided I'd better do some digging. I started checking her phone records, her emails, anything I could get my hands on. And that's when I found it, the messages. They weren't just innocent texts, they were explicit. She was having sex with her boss, Mark. I saw pictures she sent him, sneaky selfies taken in our bed, the kind of stuff that made my stomach turn. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The worst part, their affair had been going on for months. I'd trusted her, loved her, built a life with her, and she was out there screwing her boss behind my back. And she was stealing from us our savings, the family estate, while she was lying to my face. I couldn't believe it. I felt numb, then furious. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we had? I confronted her that night. I told her I knew about the affair, about the money she'd stolen, everything. Her reaction. She just scoffed, said I was overreacting, that I was paranoid. She everything at first, then started spinning some story about how she was under pressure at work, that Mark was just a friend, that the money was for some business deal she was planning. Lies, all lies. She looked me dead in the eyes and told me I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that she loved me and would never cheat or steal from me. But I knew better. I saw the truth in her eyes, and I saw the betrayal in her actions. I felt like my world was crashing down around me. I'd always considered myself a rational guy, but the anger and heartbreak hit me hard. I never thought I'd be the guy who'd find out his wife was cheating, stealing, and lying to his face all at once. It was like my entire life was a house of cards, and suddenly everything was falling apart. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything, the stolen money, the texts, her lies. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and hurt beyond words. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what yet. All I knew was that my life was never going to be the same after this. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a train. My mind was racing, trying to process everything I'd uncovered the night before. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was the realization that I was now sitting on a mountain of lies and stolen money. I knew I needed answers, and I needed to act fast. I decided to dig deeper into her financials. I pulled out all the bank statements, credit card bills, and legal documents I could find. The numbers told. A story of deception, hidden accounts, purchases I never knew about, and investments she'd made behind my back. One thing that hit me like a punch to the gut was the property she bought. I found out she'd purchased a house worth about $150, $0, using the stolen money. She'd hidden that from me too. The house was in her name alone, in a different part of town. I couldn't believe she'd gone so far, lied, stole, cheated, and now she was planning to start a new life with her new property, all behind my back. The thought of her living somewhere else with my money and possibly with Mark made me feel sick. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of resolve. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. I remembered how she had lied about her job, her whereabouts, and her feelings. She kept insisting she loved me, but her actions told a different story. I started thinking about what I could do. I wasn't about to let her walk away with everything: our savings, the estate, the house, and my dignity. I decided I needed a plan, and it had to be ruthless. I couldn't just confront her again and hope she'd change her mind. No, I had to be smarter, more calculated. I reached out to a lawyer I knew, someone who specialized in family law and financial disputes. I wanted to know my options. The lawyer listened carefully, then told me that I had grounds for a legal separation, possibly even a divorce, especially given the evidence of infidelity and theft. She also warned me about the property, saying I might have a claim to it if I could prove it was purchased with joint funds or if I could show that was hiding assets. That was a relief. At least I had some leverage. But I also knew I had to get more concrete evidence, more proof of her financial crimes and her affair. Over the next few days, I started gathering everything I could: screenshots of the messages, bank statements, her purchase records, and even her emails. I hired a private investigator just to confirm some details about her whereabouts and her meetings with Mark. What I found confirmed everything I suspected. She was living a double life. The affair was ongoing and she was actively hiding assets. I felt a mixture of anger and despair. How had I missed all this? How had I been so blind? I thought about the life we built, the plans, the future. It all felt like a lie now. Meanwhile, kept up the act of being the perfect wife, smiling, pretending everything was fine. She was bitchy, dismissive, and manipulative when I confronted her. She told me I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, that I was ruining our marriage over nothing. She accused me of not trusting her, of being insecure. That only fueled my rage. She was lying to my face, and she knew it. The more she lied, the more I realized I couldn't trust her anymore. I knew I had to take control of the situation, or I was going to get completely screwed over. I started planning my next move. I decided I'd confront her again, but this time prepared with all the evidence. I wanted her to see I wasn't messing around. I also contacted a financial advisor to help me understand what I could recover and how to protect what was left of our money and estate. I felt like I was in a war, except I was fighting against someone I once loved, who had betrayed everything I believed in. The betrayal was so deep that I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. But for now, I knew I had to focus on protecting what I still had and making her face the consequences of her actions. Honestly, I don't even know how I got through those days. Every time I thought about her with Mark, spending the stolen money, buying that house, my house, I felt sick. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. All I could do was focus on gathering evidence and figuring out my next steps. I knew she was planning to sue me for custody, which made everything even more complicated. The woman I loved was now actively trying to take my kid away from me, all because she was too greedy and selfish to stop. That realization made me more determined than ever. I'd fight for what was mine, for my kid, and for the truth. I didn't know how this was going to end, but I knew I couldn't let her win. After a few days of intense research and gathering evidence, I finally sat down again. I knew I had to confront her with everything I had, not just for my own peace of mind, but because I needed her to understand that I wasn't going to be played anymore. When I met her in the living room, she looked annoyed, like I was bothering her. That bitchy attitude of hers was still there, even when she knew she was caught. I laid out all the evidence I'd collected: the bank transfers, the property purchase, the messages, everything. I watched her face twist with anger, denial, and that typical dismissive smirk she liked to wear when she thought she was smarter than everyone else. She tried to lie her way out of it, of course. She said the money was a loan, that she was planning to pay it back, that Mark was just a friend, that the house was a gift from her parents. Yeah, right. She kept spinning stories, pretending she was innocent, that I was overreacting. She even had the nerve to say I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her, that I was ruining everything over some stupid accusations. I told her she was full of shit, that I'd seen the texts, the bank records, the property deal, everything. I told her she was a cheat, a thief, and a liar, and I wasn't going to let her keep doing this. Her reaction: she started crying, but not because she was sorry. No, she was crying because she thought she could manipulate me, make me feel guilty for catching her. She said I was being unreasonable, that I didn't understand how stressful her job was, how much she loved me, and how she was just trying to do what was best for herself. She looked me straight in the eyes and told me she was going to sue me for custody of our kid, claiming I was an unfit father because I was controlling and jealous. That was the last straw. I realized she was willing to do anything: lie, cheat, steal, even destroy our family to get what she wanted. That day, I felt a mix of rage and despair. I'd loved this woman once, believed in our future, and now I was faced with the reality that she was a complete stranger. I was furious at myself for trusting her so blindly. I'd given her everything: my love, my money, my life, and she just took it all and threw it away. But more than anything, I was scared. Scared of losing my kid, scared of losing everything I'd worked for, and angry at her for putting me into this mess. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to keep what was mine. I immediately contacted my lawyer again. We discussed the best way to protect my rights, especially regarding the custody battle she was threatening. I also told her about the property, the stolen money, and the affair. The lawyer explained that I might have a solid case for reclaiming some of the stolen assets and even challenging her custody claim if I could prove her unfitness and her financial misconduct. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to be strategic. I couldn't let her use her lies and manipulations to turn the court against me. Meanwhile, kept up her act of being innocent and wronged. She started spreading stories to her friends and family, claiming I was abusive and controlling, just to paint herself as the victim. That made me sick. I knew her game, but I also knew I had to stay calm and stick to the facts. I didn't want to give her any ammunition to use against me. I kept myself composed, documented everything, and prepared for the fight ahead. The worst part was knowing she was actively planning to take my child away from me. She'd already hired a lawyer of her own, and her tone in those conversations was cold and calculating. She was trying to turn everyone against me: her family, friends, even some of our neighbors, telling them I was some kind of monster. But I had my evidence and I had the truth on my side. I had to hold on to that. I knew that if I wanted to win this, I'd have to be relentless. The days that followed were a blur of court meetings, evidence exchanges, and endless stress. I felt like I was fighting not just for my money and my reputation, but for my kid's future. I kept asking myself how someone I loved could betray me so completely. It felt like my world was crumbling, yet I knew I couldn't give up. I had to keep fighting, no matter how much it hurt, because at the end of the day, I wasn't just fighting for what was rightfully mine. I was fighting to reclaim my life from the wreckage she'd left behind. The court hearings came quickly after I handed over all my evidence. It was a nightmare. Sat there, acting like she was the innocent victim, the betrayed wife, while I laid out everything: texts, bank transfers, property deeds, even the receipts for the furniture she bought with the stolen money. She tried to play the victim, crying and whining about how I was ruining her reputation, how she was just trying to do what was best for us. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The judge saw through her crocodile tears and her manipulative words. The most shocking part was when she claimed I was abusive, that I had hit her once during an argument. That was a lie. I was furious. I knew she was trying to damage my reputation to sway the court in her favor. But I had witnesses, messages, and proof that I'd never laid a finger on her. Still, hearing her lie so blatantly made my blood boil. I felt like I was fighting a war I couldn't win with her spinning her web of lies. But I stayed calm, collected, and focused on the facts. The judge ordered a temporary custody arrangement, but's lawyer immediately filed for full custody, claiming I was unfit because of her false allegations. That's when I realized she was willing to go to any lengths to keep the kid and get rid of me. I knew I had to step up my game. I hired a private investigator again to gather more evidence of her lifestyle, her meetings with Mark, her spending habits, her attempts to hide assets. I couldn't let her manipulate the court into believing she was the only suitable parent. Meanwhile, was trying to turn everyone against me. She told her friends I was controlling, jealous, and abusive. She even spread rumors that I was an unfit father, which made me sick. I had to be careful about what I said and did, because I knew she was watching and waiting for her moment to strike. I kept a detailed journal of everything, every interaction, every lie, every suspicious activity. I wanted to have everything documented in case I needed it later. One day, while going through our financial records, I discovered she had opened multiple secret accounts I never knew about under different names. It was clear she was trying to hide her assets and keep me from finding out the full extent of her betrayal. That was the final straw. I realized she'd been planning to run away with the money and the house, leaving me with nothing. I couldn't let that happen. I contacted my lawyer immediately to file for an injunction to freeze her assets and to request a full financial disclosure. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd loved once, believed in us, and now I was facing her as an enemy. Every day felt like walking on thin ice. I kept asking myself how I got here, how I trusted someone so deeply, only to find out they'd been lying to my face for months. I was angry, hurt, and betrayed, but I knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her manipulate the system or turn everyone against me. I had to fight for my rights and for my kids' future. The worst part was imagining her taking my child away, convinced she was the victim, while I was painted as the villain. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to be strategic, patient, and relentless. I reached out to a counselor to help me process all these emotions: anger, sadness, frustration. I was drowning in all of it, but I also knew I had to keep my head clear. I had to be ready for the next battle because I wasn't going to let her destroy what little I had left of my life and my family. I had to win, not just for me, but for my kid. That's what kept me going through the sleepless nights and endless court dates. The months that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles, secret investigations, and emotional exhaustion. Every time I thought I had a handle on things would throw a new curveball. She started filing motions, claiming I was trying to kidnap my own child or that I was threatening her. All lies. I had a mountain of evidence proving her lies, her financial misconduct, and her affair with Mark. But the courts, I learned, could be slow and complicated, especially when someone played dirty. I remember sitting in the courtroom during one hearing, watching her smug face as her lawyer argued that I was an unfit father because I lacked stability. It was absurd. I had a good job, a stable home, and I'd always been there for my kid. But manipulations had made her spin stories about how I was controlling and dangerous. The court was skeptical, but I had the evidence. I had proof of her secret accounts, the property she bought with stolen money, and her affair. I knew I could win, but it was going to take time, patience, and a lot of resilience. In the meantime, kept escalating her lies. She accused me of emotional abuse, claiming I was trying to manipulate her and control her life. She even hired her own private investigator to dig up dirt on me, but I'd already anticipated this. I had my own team gathering dirt on her, too. It was a dirty game, but I was determined to come out on top. I knew I couldn't let her win, not after everything she'd done. I had to be strategic and stay one step ahead. One day, I got a call from my lawyer. She told me she had uncovered some shocking new evidence. Emails from s account where she was discussing plans to leave the country with my kid, using the stolen money and the property she bought. She was planning to vanish, and all her lies about being stuck at work or trying to fix our marriage were just cover stories. I felt a surge of anger and fear. If she managed to pull that off, I'd never see my child again, and all my efforts would be for nothing. I immediately filed for an emergency custody hearing, citing her plans to flee and her financial misconduct. The judge granted a temporary restraining order, preventing her from leaving the state with the child. It was a relief, but I knew it was only a temporary fix. I had to prove she was unfit, that she was trying to run away with the stolen funds, and that she was lying about everything. I worked tirelessly, poring over every piece of evidence, preparing my case. Meanwhile, facade started cracking. Her friends and family began to see through her lies. Some of her closest confidants even reached out to me privately, expressing doubts about her stories. That gave me some hope. I knew I wasn't alone in this fight, and I had enough proof to show that she was the one causing chaos. But I also knew that in court, appearances mattered. She was good at manipulation, and I had to stay calm, collected, and relentless. The emotional toll was immense. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and exhausted. Every day I wondered how I'd let myself trust someone so manipulative. I kept replaying her lies, her cheating, her theft, everything she did to destroy us. I kept thinking about my kid, about what kind of person she was trying to turn him into. I promised myself I wouldn't let her win, no matter how long or difficult the fight. I had to hold on to hope, to the truth, and to my love for my child. That was what kept me going through sleepless nights and endless court battles. I knew this wasn't over yet, but I was determined to come out on top, for myself, and for the little family I still believed in. The final months were a blur of court dates, negotiations, and emotional exhaustion. I'd spent so much time fighting to keep what was mine, my money, my reputation, my family. Lies had almost succeeded in tearing everything apart, but I'd managed to gather enough evidence to turn the tide. The day the judge finally made her ruling, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. She granted me full custody of my kid, ordered to pay back every penny she stole, and dismissed her claims for custody based on her lies and her attempts to run with the stolen money. It was over, at least for now. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and betrayal cuts deep. I was naive to think that love alone could protect me from someone's true nature. Wasn't just a cheating wife, she was a thief, a manipulator, and a liar. She thought she could get away with everything, but I proved her wrong. The financial damage she caused is still a sore spot. I've had to rebuild my savings from scratch, and the estate she tried to steal is gone for good. But the most painful part was losing the woman I thought I knew. The experience changed me. I'm more cautious now, more guarded, but also more aware of how quickly things can fall apart when trust is broken. I learned to read people better, to protect myself and my interests fiercely. I also learned that sometimes the only way to fight back is with facts, patience, and an unrelenting focus on what's right. I don't regret fighting for my kid or my money. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I don't think I'd do anything differently. Now, I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I spend more time with my child, who's been my anchor through all this chaos. I've started therapy to help process the betrayal and rebuild my confidence. I've also learned to be more careful about who I trust and to never ignore my instincts again. Actions taught me a harsh lesson about the importance of vigilance and standing up for yourself when it matters most. To anyone reading this, who might be going through something similar, I want to say, don't ignore those red flags. Trust your gut, gather evidence if you suspect something isn't right, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. People can surprise you in the worst ways, and you have to be ready to stand your ground. Love is important, but so is self-respect and protecting your future. I hope my story serves as a cautionary tale, but also as a reminder that even after the darkest storms, there's a chance for a new beginning. I'm still healing, but I'm stronger now, and I'll never let anyone take that away from me again.